My next patron question is from Benjamin, who would like to know if I think there's such a thing as a bad idea for a movie or show. So something I've long felt for years is that any premise or idea, no matter how crazy, can work as a movie or show. It's ultimately the execution that matters. You could have the most ridiculous, most cliche premise for a story, but if you manage to pull it off and create something intriguing and entertaining, then you'll have done your job. I think every idea has the potential to work, and it's all about shaping it and finding creative uses for that concept. I'm sure people will list examples of bad ideas that should never be attempted, like remakes, for example. But plenty of worthwhile remakes do exist, including of classics that people might consider untouchable. I think the problem with The Lion King was not that it was a remake of a beloved animated film done with photorealistic visuals. I think the problem with that movie was it stuck too close to the original and just felt like an expensive tech demo without its own identity, and thus became an uninteresting shot-for-shot version of a film many of us know extremely well. If Jon Favreau had taken an approach similar to Julie Taymor with the stage music adaptation of The Lion King, then I think it would have worked better. However, contrary to belief, there are great remakes of classic and highly regarded movies, like Peter Jackson's King Kong and Alan Johnson's To Be or Not to Be. I included those on a list I did a while back, counting down my favorite remakes, which even included 2 movies directed by Martin Scorsese. I'm sure there was a time when if you suggested they should make a movie based on a toy or board game, you'll be laughed out of the room. However, the film adaptation of Clue ended up becoming a delight, as it took the concept of the board game and devised a funny script, brought in great actors like Tim Curry and Madeline Kahn to further add to the eccentric personalities of the characters, and executed it really well. Many years later, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller would create a movie centered around Lego. A lot of people were shocked this movie was so brilliant, but I wasn't. Number one, because Lord and Miller previously took the book Clyde of Chance Meatballs, which largely consisted of a bunch of illustrations of food falling from the sky, and made something hilarious and highly creative with it. And number two, there are already animated Lego specials that show the humorous potential of telling a story with those building blocks. I think the endless possibilities of Lego allowed for so many creative avenues to take it, and I love that Lord and Miller went with a story that ultimately celebrated that aspect of the toy. And recently, Greta Gerwig found a funny and insightful angle when she made a movie about Barbie. We even have an interesting case with Ouija. The first movie based on that toy was just a generic teen slasher film and not one I think worked. So the notion of someone directing a prequel to that movie probably seemed like expanding an idea that was already proven to not be a good one. However, with Ouija, Origin of Evil, Mike Flanagan made a really good horror movie with interesting characters and solid scares. So whenever I see an announcement that some studio has licensed the rights to make a movie based on a toy, I don't scoff at it, because the right creative mind can tell an imaginative story with them. After all, didn't we all do that as children? Same goes for any movie. I'm sure when it was announced that David Fincher would direct and Aaron Sorkin would write a movie about Mark Zuckerberg's time at Harvard and the creation of Facebook, there were people who wondered how that could be exciting in any way. It was even originally announced by media outlets as just the Facebook movie, and Facebook was still a very new website at the time, which only added to the skepticism. And yet Fincher and Sorkin did make an exciting and fascinating film about the subject. I actually have a fondness for these kinds of movies about the creation of a product, as I find the evolution from the initial idea to its creation to its rise or potential fall to be genuinely fascinating, whether it's Facebook and the social network, McDonald's and the founder, or BlackBerry. Some might point to something like the Emoji Movie and how that was always a crummy idea that would never work. I disagree with that too. I think the Emoji Movie absolutely could have been a decent film under the right execution. After all, Roger Hargreaves wrote several books with emoji-like characters that were popular and well-liked by many. Even the story Tony Leonis and his writers came up with the Emoji Movie could have resulted in a funny, creative film with a lot to say about our modern way of communicating in an internet age. Mike White was brought in to provide a few punch-ups, and a bit of his sensibility peeps through in a few moments, but he apparently only worked on the movie for a short period. The main problem with the Emoji Movie was not the concept, but instead that the characters were not that interesting, the jokes largely fell flat, and there were a lot of missed opportunities in how it depicted the various phone apps and emojis. Every movie and television series you see go through a number of tweaks and changes as they make their way to the finish line, which can either improve it or harm it in unfortunate ways, but that core idea always has the potential to grow and evolve into something special. Thank you for your question, Benjamin.